Welcome to WYTV7 Christian Broadcasting. This is Health and Wellness Conversation with Wellness Nurse Gwen, and we have a guest today. Our guest is Natashia Brown. How are you, Natashia?
I am wonderful, Gwen. How are you?
I am well. So thank you for joining us on Health and Wellness Conversation as we begin this new month of April in this holy season. So the month of April, one of the topics is stress. So can you tell me about your journey with health and wellness and stress?
Yes, ma'am. And first of all, I want to say thank you for having me on with you as well as WYTV. And I'm just excited to share my story because definitely that is how I got into wellness. Really, when I was getting into wellness, I didn't realize that's what I would be doing, is sharing not just my story, but wellness and how to definitely use the body to recover from illness as well as just to love ourselves. So with my wellness journey, definitely what happened was divorce. And plain and simple, if that's not stressful enough, I can't get you another story.
Yes, ma'am.
So going through divorce, just a lot of issues that were going on with my body. And we'll just say signs and symptoms. And usually, we medicate those signs and symptoms instead of really finding out what the root issue is. And in medicating the signs and symptoms, at that time I was working in a large hospital, so they had their own clinic for employees, and I was constantly going in for different signs and symptoms. And at first I thought it was the job that was making me sick because it was an older building. But then I realized that it was the stress of having two small children at the time and going through a divorce and all of the stress of still working, maintaining the home, and just the transition of going from married to being single created a lot of stress. And I was so overwhelmed that my body was responding. And our bodies respond to protect us. And I'm sure as a nurse, you know that we have those signs and symptoms.
Yes. So how did it affect you? Did your blood pressure change? Were you becoming sick?
General illnesses. I was definitely having migraines. So they thought it was maybe something that I was eating, or again, like I said, the building that we were in was older, so they weren't sure if it was something in the building. Also, I was always exhausted and just constantly having brain fog, couldn't get in a rhythm or routine, just constantly frustrated. But the headaches was a major physical symptom that I was having. And then with all of that going on, I had an abnormal pap smear.
Wow.
And in all of that, with that diagnosis, I was with a doctor there, and I'll say she probably was a good doctor, but she only gave me one option. She said that it was cancer, and I asked for a second opinion or for her to retest the tissue just to make sure. And she did not want to do that. So she gave me a diagnosis of cervical cancer, and she expected me to receive that and move forward with it. And at the time, the ministry I was in, the pastor did a lot of holistic things. And that's what really got me into finding out what were some natural ways that I can begin to heal my body and not damage my body so that I can extend my life and not receive that diagnosis.
So that is very interesting that you said your pastor intervened and mentioned. I find that a lot of pastors, they're not on board with holistic health just yet. Some of them are starting, especially in the area that I live in. So that is very interesting. What holistic things did he give you?
Well, he redirected me to a holistic practitioner. And in working with her, there were a lot of natural herbs and supplements that I was able to use in order to begin to reverse the illness, or it really was a diagnosis. There were no signs or symptoms. And when I went to the next doctor, I definitely got rid of that doctor because she was not willing to work with me holistically nor was she willing to do a second pap smear just to make sure that the diagnosis was a true diagnosis.
Wow.
So I got a new doctor, and we did some more testing, and the pap smear still came back negative, but she was not as abrasive as far as just saying it was cancer. She gave me other alternatives, some other options, and some different things. And she was more open to me doing some natural things versus just recommending some of the cancer treatments that are recommended and beginning to damage my body. So she was more open. And that did help relieve some of the stress. Having someone in your corner, especially a medical professional, and like you said, with a spiritual professional, those two working together is very encouraging.
Were there any particular scriptures that your pastor offered to you during your time of stress and your time of healing?
Not necessarily scriptures, just encouragement that it was not a death sentence, basically. But what I did do is I began to go to the local Bible bookstores and find every book I could with the healing scriptures and with anything about healing the body. Because what is so amazing is we don't think about the body being a self-healing machine, and that's definitely what I push as a holistic coach, because of the simple fact that with the body, whatever the body creates, the body can reverse as long as we give it the proper tools.
Yes. And how long did it take for you to start feeling better and feeling like yourself after you had saw the holistic practitioner?
Probably about a year to really stop having a lot of the symptoms as far as the stress symptoms I was having. But once I began to go inward and really try to find out who I was and the relationship that I was forming with the God that I said I believed, that began to really help. And that is the biggest thing to relieve stress. Finding out who you are. And, you know, I mentioned that I was going through a divorce. So the person that I was before was not the same person, which is very stressful in itself.
Yes, it's a process. Sometimes it's a painful process, and we are unsure of how our bodies are going to respond to it. I know, being human, sometimes we just want things to happen just like a flash of a light, but we're human. We're not God. We're not Jesus. So we go through things. But I really applaud your pastor for reaching out to you. And I'm going to take a break to say thank you for joining us at WYTV7 Christian Broadcasting, iHeartRadio. Also, we are on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. We are a nonprofit broadcast. Please like us on Facebook, and if you feel so, please donate to us so we can continue to bring you health and wellness conversation and other topics. Natashia?
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else about your health and wellness journey?
It's a daily journey. It's definitely daily. Everything that I have learned up to today, tomorrow could even change. So there's always something to learn when it deals with holistic and definitely with my body. And a lot of times, you know, we have basically accepted the aging process as certain things are supposed to happen when we get to certain ages. But if we can get in our minds that God created the body, and with our relationship with God, we can begin to really defy those things that we think should be a part of the process. Because we don't have to slow down. We don't have to begin to look our age, because of the simple fact that there are so many people defying what it looks like to be 50, 60, 70, even 30. Some of your 20-year-olds look older than women that I know that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s. And you have so many women that are taking care of themselves. And, you know, as we mature, we should become wiser. So, less stress as you become more mature. I won't say older, as you become more mature, because you're learning. You gain the wisdom that you need in order to really take care of yourself. And a lot of people look at superstars and think they're the only ones that can reverse the aging process, when anyone can do it as long as you are willing and open.
Yes, and basically God has already written that for us in the Bible. We just have to follow his word. And the people that do practice holistic medicine, they sort of get a sense of that, that we come from the earth, our healing is from the earth as well.
Right.
Prayer is most definitely a part of healing. And as you said, after you divorced, you had to find out who you were again, because you sort of threw away the old you, and now you have a new you adapting to a new situation. Besides the holistic practitioner and the help from your pastor, were there any techniques that you did for stress? Did you meditate? Did you exercise?
I'm just getting back into exercising. So I did start walking, which is a great way for me to meditate, because it's a way to be quiet without having to be quiet. Because, most people, when you think of meditating, you think that you're in a room. A lot of people think they need to be in a dark room and be quiet. And sometimes that just does not work for everyone, because you can't stop thinking. So if you can do a walking meditation, which is always good, walking prayer is even good. And just getting yourself centered and focused on what you are doing. And as you're walking, you'll be able to be quiet and not necessarily be still, but your spirit will be able to calm down and you'll be still. And as you begin to calm down, you can hear God speaking to you and through you, and you'll be able to respond. And that internal conversation is what a lot of people are afraid of, just the quietness. Most people I find are afraid to be by themselves, which is the greatest thing that you could ever do for yourself, taking time to just be quiet.
Absolutely. Meditating and walking outside. I have my favorite park that I go to when the weather warms up here, hopefully soon. And I can walk and just observe nature. And I see how God has taken care of nature. So I know that God is going to take care of me clearly. So walking meditation, I haven't done it, but I will try it the next time that I go for a walk. I see that as being beneficial. Now, did you take any specific vitamins, supplements, or anything during this process?
There were combinations of supplements that I would take depending on, and there's a practice called iridology. So the practitioner I was working with, she would read my eyes. Basically, that's the practice. It's the practice of reading the eyes and taking the eye mapping and finding out what the body needs or where it's deficient. And those were the supplements that she recommended. And I do something similar with my clients, but we use the energy from the body. And there's a machine that I use. They use their hand, and the machine reads where the body is deficient, and it recommends supplements that way. And so with those particular supplements, it's always personalized, always, because we are all individual. And in the hospital field, in the medical field, we give out treatment plans based on your diagnosis, which doesn't always work for everyone. So knowing what your body specifically needs is always something that I definitely advocate for. And you know your body. You're the only one that knows your body.
Yes. And it's the same thing I tell people, even with twins and triplets, they're the same, but they're not the same. DNA is different. So each person is going to respond differently to different treatment plans. And the medications, as we both know, that physicians prescribe are chemical based. So they're not healthy for our bodies at all. Any other things that you did to heal yourself?
Yes, ma'am. Just basically being open. And as I began to be open and listen to my body, even now when I go to particular restaurants, if I'm eating out, which I don't do often because for whatever reason, sometimes when I go out, I just can't get to a place where I can get what I need and what my body is asking for. And as a vegetarian, it's not always an option to eat out depending on where I am, especially if I'm traveling. So what I began to do is listen to my body. And just like with the individualized plans that I do for my clients, and that was done for me through iridology, what happens is you can listen to the body. And if you're getting ready to eat something and the body is not in agreement, we don't stop, because if it tastes good, we think we should eat it. And I always tell people, you know, it's wonderful if the food tastes good, but a waste of time. Just yes, ma'am. So what we want to do is make sure that we listen to our bodies.
Absolutely.
Listen to our bodies, and as we are
so with listening,
even with when I was having the migraines, you know, I could have easily began to medicate that and not find out what was going on in my body, not have gone to the doctor. And I have nothing against doctors, because that's the best way to find out overall what you need to be doing for your body. But there are a lot of other practices too that holistically you can get into and find out what's going on with your. And taking those signs and symptoms is just that, signs and symptoms, not a reason to medicate, but what is it that's going on? Sometimes it's just a matter of hydrating.
I think also when we do have signs and symptoms and we do go to our regular practitioners, they may give us a diagnosis, but one thing we cannot do is accept or believe the diagnosis, because, you know, I am. So we would have to say, I am healthy. No, I do not have whatever the illness is. And if you speak positivity, over your life and into your situation, over your circumstances, into your health, you most definitely will see a difference. If you claim what someone tells you, then you're calling everything that's attached to it into your life, which can also increase stress and ill health to you. So I applaud you for being positive, recognizing, and not accepting. I think that's an excellent thing. And the fact that you have transitioned so gracefully into now having your own practice, correct?
Yes, and I don't call it a practice, but definitely holistic coaching is what I do, because, you know, practice, most people associate it with the medical field. But, you know, like you said, not accepting. And I could not accept that because my children were small at the time. So a death sentence was not part of my plan, and it definitely did not fit into my schedule. Amen. So making sure that I knew that, you know, we quote scriptures, but if we don't ever apply those things, if we never go through a situation where we can apply those things to our lives, we don't know what it really means when it says that God spoke and things began to happen. And, you know, in Genesis, we take that as some type of story, but when we began to really use our voice, the God in us, we allow that word to come out and we speak to whatever the situation is, we can watch it change just the way the world was created.
Yes, you are 199% right. I mean, the whole thing of it is that God did speak and things happened, and he gave us the same power. Some people believe that the pastors and the bishops only have that power, but God gave us that power too. We can clearly speak into and over our lives and other people's lives too. But faith and mindset are key. And this is the way that people can eradicate stress. Because as we both know, stress is probably the from your pastor as well, and he guided and directed you, and then you knew what to do the rest of the way, and you most definitely sought God through the process, as you mentioned. So again, I truly, truly applaud you. Now, how do you implement your holistic lifestyle with your children?
So what I do is I've not been as rigid, but there were, when they were younger, especially my younger two, they had diagnosis of asthma. And what I found is that is a big childhood illness that doctors are, during that time it was more prevalent, and it probably still is now, but the asthma is really connected to dairy. And a lot of people hate when I say that, because when I have encountered other children and they are having what parents think may be allergies, or it could be diagnosed as asthma as well, usually I ask, are they eating any dairy products? And when I took my children off of dairy, what I began to see take place in their body was amazing, because they did not have as many colds. The runny nose that, is notorious, especially in daycares, when all the children share the germs and they all have the runny nose, and that is a big thing. But they give children dairy in daycare. They give children dairy in the public schools, in private schools as well. But all of that plays a major part in creating an excess of mucus in the body. So with that excess of mucus in the body, we had to find out what was going on. And so with each illness, I found out something different.
Right.
Okay. And what amazed me is that there are studies and practices and different things that are already published that as the mainstream public, unless we want to know that information, we would never get it.
Research is key and reading is key. But again, I want to thank you, Natashia. I really enjoyed our conversation at Health and Wellness Conversation on WYTV7 Christian Broadcasting. I want to thank the listeners and the viewers for coming and joining us. And please look for us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, as well as Facebook. Please donate to our broadcast, as we are a nonprofit broadcast, and we enjoy having these conversations with you. We thank you greatly, Natashia. Live and be well.
Thank you.